Sure.
Recording
Might
is
look more
started.
professional. All right. Good evening, people. That's where you're supposed to respond.
Hello, how's it going?
Hi.
There's nobody here. You're just talking to yourself.
Have a good day, eh?
Yeah, it's a hey. Oh, nice touch.
What's the meeting about?
The meeting's about Albion. That's probably why you're here. A couple of things to go over. First thing, you may have seen Drin posted a link for the Albion Online t-shirts. So make sure you look at them. And actually, there's more than t-shirts, as you mugs and more stuff than that. So just make sure you look at it. It should be pinned in the Albion members channel. Besides that, Val, who is, yes, he's here. Hi, Val. This is where you were supposed to say hi.
Oi.
We cannot hear you.
I have myself muted. Hey, what's up?
There you go. Val's here, and a big part of this meeting is about builds. So obviously people have questions and need answers on that. So that's where Val is our resident expert on that. Obviously, I know a lot of us have been testing out different builds in the past couple of days and weeks. So there's obviously more than what's the current meta, because things have changed and things are going to keep changing. Obviously, from here until release, there's at least one, possibly, actually, no, I think there's only one more patch with changes to items. Correct, Val?
Yeah, and I just want to state too, from basically what I've gathered, it's not going to be a huge meta-defying patch. The only thing I think that's really going to get adjustments on a probably not huge scale, but definitely getting a buff is nature. I don't see them changing too much.
All right. Well, I mean, obviously we'll have to keep tabs on it to make sure they don't change that plan. Something else also, there's been people requesting access to the master plan, which is linked off of the document that also is pinned. Sorry, getting discorded by Rook. I'll actually make sure I repost the link to the master plan, but in the Albion members. But make sure that if you are requesting access to it, that you do private message Rook and tell him that you are this and that's this person that Rook just asked for access, because he does not know everybody by their emails, so he is not going to let anybody just get access on it unless they get he gets information as to who you are. Another thing, we are doing pretty good on crafters, but we still need a couple dedicated crafters. I also, after I am done with this talking part, I will post a picture of what we're looking at right now. Am I supposed to say that, Rook? What you just said in Discord? Anyways, yeah, back on track. Yeah, apparently EOS already tried to access our master plan. So yeah, it's nothing too secret in there, but it's still something that we want to make sure we don't really share around with people who will be our enemies. So back to crafting, we're doing pretty good on what we have. I'll post a picture of what we are looking at right now as far as what we have covered and what we don't. There are still a couple of slots. I think there's one or two of like the urgent ones and maybe like 4 or 5 of the non-urgent ones. As far as the non-urgent ones goes, it could be people that takes more than one craft in there because they're not as vital or weren't identified as being as vital. Something else to go over as well. First, I mean, for sure, our business will be solidifying builds. So if you have any questions, make sure that you ask up to Val when the period will be there. Afterwards, we want to clarify the goals for squads, which that has been progressing pretty well. I will be finishing up the roster tonight because there are a couple of people that probably are still marked as free agents for now, but they will go to the squads as they were marked in the sheet by, I believe Rook did that. So Storm Squad and Ramrod are going to be the two squads that will be taking most of the people. And last but not least, we do heavily suggest that squads you set future get-togethers. A lot of you have already started doing that, and that's great. But make sure that you set times so that maybe you can chat together. Maybe you can even get in game and test out a couple of things. Maybe even do yellow zone, hellgates, dungeons, whatever not. This would be a great opportunity in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks before release that you guys try out those features and build synergy together. So with that said, I believe we can move on to the first order of business, solidifying builds. So if anybody has any questions as far as builds, maybe some builds that you've seen off of the document that's been posted, and you're not sure what why that build is made that way, then make sure you speak up and ask those questions right now.
I'll start. Some of these artifact builds that require a lot of artifacts, what's the realistic timeline for getting into that kind of stuff? Is that like a couple weeks? Are we looking at a couple months?
For artifact builds, no. It's realistic to expect to get into those in the first week, definitely. Realistically, you want to be in those probably the second or third day if you can, but definitely the first week. It's definitely.
How maintainable is that?
I'm sorry?
I said, how maintainable is it to like depend on, well, I'm going to run this build, but it's always going to require this artifact or that?
Basically, as far as artifacts are concerned, your standard artifacts that drop in the world off bosses and things of that nature, they're pretty attainable. I will say, though, that Hellgate artifacts, the ones that only drop in Hellgates, those ones are a lot more expensive. We're talking 4, 5, 6 times the price of what you would find on some other artifacts. So that's just something to keep in mind. For example, everyone wants to try Icicle Staff, which is great because it's probably one of the strongest weapons in the game, but it's a Hellgate artifact. So you just have to keep that in mind.
Can you gated by Hellgates now? I thought they were all craftable just by things you obtain, but you can only obtain some of them through Hellgate?
Yeah, you have Hellgate artifacts and then you just have your standard artifacts.
What do you think will be like the generic PvP tier after a little bit? Will it be like a tier 6.3 kind of a deal, or like will people actually be running 8 and stuff like that?
Usually after the first month, it kind of settles around 6.1, where it's pretty reasonably affordable, and you're going to see a lot of the more solid teams running that. And then your top tier teams, your A teams at GVG, they're going to be in the 7.1 and potentially 8.1. But 6.1 usually the first month is pretty much the standard. Your goal item level wise is you want to try to get to 1100. That's your goal.
Okay.
Can you outline some of the builds in the PD, or not the PDFs, but the document that are Hellgate builds as opposed to open world?
Yeah, I'll run through a little bit of everything real quick, just a couple of things. And again, I just want to state, a lot of these builds are not my opinion. This is just the meta. This is what the good teams are running. These are what the bad teams are running. These are just the most common picks. I'll kind of elaborate on why certain things are picked over certain things, whether it be a spell and a helmet in comparison to something else. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but, I'll give you a general idea as to certain things that you're looking for. So I guess I'll start with like kind of 2 of the more popular tank weapons right now. These are pretty much exclusively the main tank weapons you're going to see. That's going to be the two-handed mace, two-handed heavy mace. The reason why this is so popular is it has snare charge, which is a jump/mobility spell that snares. And then they also have, more importantly, on the E, an AoE silence that also purges. I can't tell you how good purge is. I mean, it gets rid of pretty much every positive buff in the game. We're talking heals over time. If you're using heroic strike, that movement speed buff gets rid of that. It gets rid of run. I mean, it gets rid of everything. And it's AoE. So as you can see, that's just going to be solid. For plate for a tank, pretty much on every build, you're going to be looking at wind wall. It just allows a lot of zoning. It allows you to reposition in fights, and a good wind wall can straight up just win you a fight. So it has a lot of carrying capacity in that sense. For most tanks, you're generally going to see, on the heavy mace at least, they're generally going to run the night boots for just the shield. Gives them a little bit more durability to them and their teammates. And then on the two-handed great mace, the difference is that runs the night chest plate, but you'll see a lot of them potentially run rush. Basically, rush has changed a little bit since you guys last played. It now gives a CC increase when you're in rush, so they'll rush and tackle their targets to get longer stuns. As for the helm slots, this is kind of where you have a little bit more flexibility. But the main thing is the most dominant helm right now is the demon helm. The reason being is it has silence on it, and the silence lasts forever. So let's say you're heavy mace, this is basically what the tanks will do. Even if they're going against, let's say, a nature healer with cleanse, they'll dive in, kind of AoE, snare, silence, and root everyone. And then the healer's going to throw out a cleanse to try to, get those people out of it, assuming he didn't get hit by it as well. And then that's when the tank will demon helm and silence the healer. And then you'll just try to burn down a DPS. Or they'll silence a DPS so it can't ice block to just make it explode. So the thing with that helm, though, it's an artifact that's very expensive because it's a hell artifact. But then if that's not something you want to run or can afford to run, there's a lot of options. It's very flexible. You can run, if you like the Cleric helm, they have a knockback. You can run the Knight's helm for Stone Skin, or I think actually that's Block, Guardian Stone Skin. So you have a lot of flexibility that way. You can even run Leather for Howl. It's really going to be kind of a preference thing on that, unless you can run the Demon helm, which is hands down the best helm.
Hey, Val, I got some questions about boots.
Yeah, what's that?
As you know, I was going with the light crossbow build, and I've noticed a lot of people have been recommending like assassin boots because it allows you to like dodge roll through wind walls and firewalls and everything, so you can get to safety easier or you can play aggressively more. But there's also been a lot of talk about night boots again being overpowered and recommending everyone use night boots. I'm worried about night boots getting nerfed more because they've already been nerfed and stuff, but are assassin boots, pretty good in that sense, or what do you think on them?
Yeah, basically right now most builds are going to run either, like you said, the night boots, or they're generally going to run assassin. Kind of my opinion on that, for if you're ranged DPS, in my opinion, it's not your job to be shielding your teammates and bubbling them and trying to keep them alive. Your job is to stay alive. The assassin boots, especially with the new Hellgate designs, they're very choky. You're going to be in situations where you need to get out of things. Like you said, you can dodge roll through wind walls. You can dodge roll from firewalls. It can literally just save your life. So I'm a huge fan of the assassin boots on, especially the one-handed crossbow. I think if you're paying backline DPS, certain builds might run something a little bit differently, but you definitely can't go wrong with assassin boots. But again, you can't go wrong with night boots either, but I don't see them really nerfing or tweaking either boot. The assassin boots is also on a 20-second cooldown, which is really nice because most fights you generally can use it twice. So
the other thing is the Hunter's Helm. They've returned Retaliate to the field again. So the Hunter's Helm now utilizes Retaliate, which has changed to, it gives you that resistance as well as reflects damage back at your attackers. Would you say that the Hunter's Helm is pretty viable now too? I was going leather helm on my build for two reasons. One is I need the leather so I can go into the royal helmet at times for that enraged shot. But also because the leather boots and the leather helm, I can use the cooldown passive on my spell so that I can get the full 5% cooldown reduction. So the synergy is there and stuff. But I don't know if you've been able to try out the Retaliate at all or know much about it, because I think they just recently added it again.
Well, basically, my best advice for helm is just kind of across the board, and this is probably the most important slot, honestly, to talk about. Basically, it's kind of come down to, again, healer has a little bit more option, but if you're range DPS, pretty much your only real option. If you're running Cloth and you're ranged DPS, you have to run Cleric Helm. If you don't run Cleric Helm, and you really don't want to be GVGing or doing any type of Hellgate situation. Basically, good teams like the people I run with, before we kind of engage our fights, we'll inspect people. And if we see that you're DPS and Cloth and you're not wearing Cleric Helm, guess what's going to happen? You're going to probably die in about 5 seconds. I mean, that's just basically the name of the game right now. It's just probably the strongest spell in the game. I mean, on armor anyway.
I assume Cleric has Ice Block.
Yeah, Ice Block. Yeah, it's just absolutely amazing. Now, the only option Clothware that might opt out of Ice Block potentially, but again, this is only if you're high end, very skilled, is a healer. If you're a holy healer and you have a really good team around you and you have a lot of practice, some holy healers will run cleanse on their helm, but 90% of them out there are still going to run Ice Block, and that's pretty much across the board.
So how is mana gen then?
Sorry?
How is mana regen once you get around the 1100 item level? Because it used to be you had to run mana on your helm just to be able to keep into the fight.
It's better now. They've definitely done some improvements in that sense. Now, on some longer fights, yes, there is a chance you're going to run out of mana. But again, you have to keep in mind if that's an issue for you, a lot of, especially the casters, they all have mana on hit. So you should be auto-attacking when you're fighting. So.
Oh, that's right. They put in the mana. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of my opinion on the helms. It's, well, not even my opinion, actually. I'll be honest. At first, I wasn't a huge fan of Ice Block either. But after kind of doing more competitive GVGs and Hellgates for quite a long period of time, basically came to the determination that if you want to Hellgate, you have to have Ice Block. I mean, fights are
dived, right?
Yeah, you're just going to die, and there's nothing your team's going to do to save you. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
Did you have any, was that kind of answering most of your question there?
If you're talking to me, then yeah.
Yeah. So, and as far as retaliation goes, I did mess with it a little bit. It's definitely improved from where it was before, but it still doesn't reflect dot damage. So, I mean, it's still buggy. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and the measly resist it gives you is not going to be enough to really make a difference. So you're just gonna die, take a second longer, and maybe do a little bit more damage before you die. But the end result is you're still gonna be dead. So,
is the shield charge on Night Boots still providing damage reduction with armor, or is it like Arcane?
It's P4. So it doesn't take in your armor. It's just like a flat stuff. It's shield for 1,000. You know, that's what it. If you take 1,000 damage from a spell, if you take 2 damage from 2 spells that do 500 damage, it's gone. It's not reduced by your armor. It's applied before.
Okay.
But again, keep in mind one other little nice thing about it is if you are casting, the bubble does prevent you from suffering from pushback damage on your cast. So, but remember, it also is purgeable. So a good two-handed Great Mace tank will be waiting to snare charge and purge the bubble off of you as well. So you got to keep that in mind.
How is mana for Mace and Hammer now? Because the snare charge in that used to be like you basically can use like 4 times a fight and then you're
Well, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, most fights aren't going to last longer than, I mean, it's on what, a 15-second cooldown? 10-second cooldown. I mean, 40 seconds is kind of the high end of how long a fight lasts typically. So that's pretty good. As far as Hammer goes, it was really bad before. With the most recent patch here with Hector, they reduced a lot of the cost as high as 40% on some of the abilities. So Hammer's in a really good spot right now. You really can't go wrong with Hammer or Great Mace. You know, both are going to be viable, both are going to be good. Just make sure you obviously build your armor picks correctly.
Is hamstring 10-second cooldown, 16-second duration still?
Yeah, I don't think they've done much to hamstring. That's on swords, right?
Yeah, and heavy armor is still 50% increase CC duration.
Yep, heavy armor is basically the king for CC. And another big change is the only slot on gear that gives any CC resistance now is your chest piece, and obviously shield still does. But they just
is cloak just a fancy slot?
That
looks.
gives mana, passive mana regen, and overall mana, but not a lot. But it does help. And then that's just kind of the main tanking builds. I'll go over healing real quick. There's only 2 options for healing. You have your one-handed holy with Desperate Prayer. That's the current top-end best healing weapon in the game with Eye of Secrets. As far as artifacts go, that is not a Harl artifact, but I will tell you right now that will be extremely expensive from the moment the game launches to a year down the road. Eye of Secrets, as far as healers are concerned, is the best in slot. So it's very highly sought after for pretty much anyone that does PvP. Basically, Holy kind of, again, you're going to run, the standard build. So you're going to run your Ice Block Helm. If you're, like I said, high end, you can run Cleanse. For chest, you're going to run your Frost Armor. Or if you have a preference for it, you can run Cleric Chest. Or even Speedcaster if that's something you really enjoy. But again, you got to remember, you're going to get the most healing out of Mage Armor because it gives you 10% more. And then last but not least, on healer, I would recommend you go Night Boots because it is your job to keep your team alive. So that makes sense in that particular instance.
What about, there's a Druid staff or the Druid staff that has a medium cooldown, like burst heal after 3 seconds for nature, and it's one-handed.
Yep, and that's
how hard
that's
is
the
that
current
to get?
Not too bad again, but any healing staff is generally a little bit more expensive. But yeah, for nature right now, that's the only viable healing staff for any type of 5v5 play.
Can you still
they
get
will
around
be
30%
buffing
cooldown reduction with an offhand and food?
well, the thing is, you're not going to run offhand with that. You're going to run Eye of Secrets.
I thought you said that was like impossible to obtain though, or like really hard.
Well, it's expensive. But the bottom line is, if you want to really heal, that's what you're going to want to run. Otherwise, you're going to be running out of mana.
Flat percentage increase to your stuff.
It gives you it increases your mana pool and your mana regen.
Okay.
But yeah, Druid is the one-handed nature staff artifact that people are using. And then for Holy, the Great Holy is pretty good for. You can use it for Hellgates. I wouldn't recommend it because it's easy to play around, but still very good. Great Holy is the AoE Holy Explosion. Heals all your teammates around you and knocks all the enemies away. So that one can actually be quite a bit of fun too. So can't go wrong with it. But Desperate Prayer, the one-handed Holy, is the more preferred healing staff for PvP, like small scale.
Is that the one that has like the big burst on E with like a 10-second cooldown?
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing is.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Anyone have any questions about healers?
Yeah. So on the topic of like nature getting buffed there, I've played just for a little while here. I don't know what the history with the developers are, but do you think they're going to go through part of that balancing will be nerfing Holy?
I don't think so. And if they nerf Holy, it's going to be very minor. I think Holy's actually in a good spot now. I mean, for a long time, it was really not very good. I think the playstyle's kind of come around. And the thing I like about Holy is, because I'll be honest with you, Holy is a much easier playstyle to play, especially if you're new to healing. As far as nature goes, I would not recommend that. If you're just starting to play the game after not playing for a very long time, if you have no experience with PvPing, if you don't really have any experience healing, I would not recommend nature out of the gate. A lot of healers I know will start with Holy and then gradually make the transition to nature. But if you haven't healed, it's just going to be very overwhelming for you. I can tell you right now, in Hellgates, you're going to be like, the thing with Holy is designed to handle extreme burst damage, and that's currently the meta. You just want to blow someone up as quick as you can. And Holy can basically prevent that from happening. Nature is a little different in the sense that Holy, you're reactive. You're like, oh, this guy's dying, let me heal him. Nature, you almost have to predict where the damage is going to be coming out, because you have to get your HOTS rolling, you have to be rotating through all of your teammates properly. And again, if you force stack a HOT, it cleanses the HOT off of them. because it gives you mana and it gives them a little bit of a heal, but then you just have to start from scratch. So if you're misclicking and healing people incorrectly and doing your hots wrong, you're not
be
going to get
clicking
any
anybody healing as nature. Let me help you out.
Well, you know what I'm saying. You're using your hotkeys wrong.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
It's really mana efficient, though, and you're not stuck.
Well, it's more mobile, but right now, Holy just dominates. It's so good.
All right, well,
If
yeah,
that-
I'll be.
If that one staff is in the game and it's still that low cooldown, I mean, you could basically do a W or a Q plus E, and you top somebody for like 60 or 80% of their health, and it's like within like a couple seconds.
Well, that's the problem. It's
So
in a couple seconds. That's the issue. 3 seconds, you could be dead. I mean, you can.
No. I'm talking about the holy. Like,
yeah.
you literally, it's like you don't have to sit there and hard cast into somebody for 6 to 8 times to actually.
Well, yeah, it
healing
just
through
works.
It just literally works, and it's instant.
No, don't get me wrong. Nature's excellent right now. I just needs a little tweaking and healing, I think, and they're going to be buffing the healing, I believe. It's not going to be huge buffs. Like I said, if you've played this last beta, they've been very, very good about nerfing and buffing things appropriately, but very tweaking wise. They're not just like hammering things to make it either really overpowered or really underpowered. So my advice to everyone here is don't be freaking out. If there's something you like now, there's a 99.9% chance that's going to stay untouched or extremely similar gameplay style and power wise to where it will be at release. So if there's something you like now, I advise you play around with it, find out how it works for you, enjoy it. It's going to be pretty much what you expect release. They're not going to do anything drastic.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with Holy right now, and I have a lot of experience not healing Lensar, so yeah, it's gonna work out great. It's pretty good.
Yes, you'll like Holy then. And then, like I said, if you like nature, I really think they're going to put it in a good spot. Again, and we're going to want nature healers. I mean, cleanse is cleanse, and it's on they did make it to a 15-second cooldown now, but it's still going to be excellent. So if you like nature and that's your passion, I wouldn't shy you away from it. I would just say that caution. You want a little bit more experience before you jump in with it.
Where are all the purges at now, since they're back in the game?
There is an artifact Hellgate purge on Helm, and then, like I said, it's pretty much the 2-handed heavy mace. Those are the purges that you will run into most commonly.
Did they put it back in the game as a one-time purge all, or did they put it in as like, I think like there used to be one where it was like a pulsing purge for like a couple seconds, to where you basically couldn't put anything on yourself or get removed by the pulse.
No, there's nothing like that, like sustaining purge. It's just a one-time thing, but it wipes everything. So
Okay.
I mean,
I think the arcane staff used to have that pulsing one.
Yeah, Arcane doesn't have anything crazy like that anymore. Okay, so anyone have any additional questions about the healers and kind of what their roles are? All right, cool. I'll move into kind of DPS. I'll break this up into 2 spots quickly just for everyone. This is kind of going to be more or less, I guess, the most arguable kind of meta. Everyone's going to have their opinions on DPS and which ones are best. I'll kind of start with melee just because melee is kind of more in the meta right now, even though they've kind of seen a lot of their mobility nerfed. But you're going to see more dive comps probably than anything else. It's just kind of the way the meta's played out because so many melee weapons are really good, but they're balanced for the most part, but they're very strong. I'll kind of start with something that you've probably heard about is the Clarent Blade. It's an artifact sword, one-handed sword. Basically what it is it's a stacking buff that you do to yourself with Heroic Strike. Then once you get to 3 stacks, you have your E, which is basically a massive AoE around your character, and it hits really hard. It was pretty much what an arcane beam at the beginning of the beta was like one-shotting people. It was in everyone, not just one-shotting the whole team. Since then, they have nerfed it a little bit. Not much. It was 11% damage. I mean, it's a nerf, but it's still very viable. And they did nerf shield, which is what most melee comps or most melee builds will be running if they do have an offhand slot open on the sarcophagus shield, because it just gives the most damage reduction. But yeah, Clarent Blade is excellent. The favorite helm for Clarent Blade is Stone Skin, because you're kind of, think of yourself if you play HOTS, you're kind of like the Sonya of Albion Online. You're like this bruiser that does really good damage, has pretty good sustain. You have a lot of buttons to push, cooldowns. It's definitely one of the more, I would say, interactive melee builds. You have a lot of different cooldowns you can use that you need to be using properly. You have Iron Will on your W, which gives you damage reduction and a movement speed. You have your Heroic Strike you have to keep up, gives you movement speed. And then again, you have your E where you want to make sure you're positioned correctly to get the most out of it. For chest on that, you're going to go Stalkers. That's the artifact chest that does AoE damage to everything. It still does what it did, the static field thing. Again, if that's not something you can afford constantly, you can run like an assassin chest with Inferno armor. That would just give you more durability, but Stalkers really is the meta for that. Your job's to do damage. And then last but not least, pretty much you're going to see 99.9% of the people running assassin shoes. Again, you know, a wind wall will zone you. If you can roll through it or roll through that firewall, you're taking no damage from it, and you're still on the back line applying pressure, which is your job. So assassin boots is pretty much mandatory for that build. But yeah, it's pretty cut and dry, excellent, fun. It's a little bit harder to play though, because you have a lot more kind of things you got to make sure you're using correctly. The second most popular build, one of the most strongest builds by far, is Karen Caller. Again, this is another artifact. Most of the meta is artifacts because they're just really strong right now. It basically does AoE healing debuff on the enemy team, and then has good single target damage as well. Pretty much for this build, you're going to see them running the Knight's Helm, which is block, prevents all damage you take for 2 seconds, and allows you to move. And then on the chest, they're going to run Assassin's Chest with Inferno armor, gives you more durability, lets you stand the fight longer. And then last but not least, you're going to see them running Assassin shoes. It's pretty cut and dry. I recommend this build for people that don't have a lot of PvE experience but want something that's easy and fun. Very easy to play, very fun to play. Some people say it's a little boring actually, but it works. It's excellent, can't go wrong. And then another thing you're going to see very commonly is Bloodletter. I'm sure you've all heard of it from past betas. Still does what it does. It's highly mobile, and like I said, it allows you to really burst down targets, especially if your team has good focus fire. It allows you to execute people once they're below 40% health. You kind of have some flexibility on the helm with Bloodletter, but I see a lot of people like to go ice block with it. Again, you're going to see that often. And then for the chests, I've seen people run Stalker's chest, or they'll run Assassin's chest. Some people like the Stalker chest because if you Stalker static field and ice block, the static still does damage to everything around you, even though you're blocked. And then they like to run, again, Assassin shoes, or even some like on Helm like to run Smoke Bomb. But again, that's super expensive, and the ice block honestly doesn't do a good job. Those are like 3 of the top hobby high-end DPS melee builds, and then some other stuff you kind of see that's not as popular for melee, but you'll definitely see it around is you're going to see like double bladed, and then you might see the double bladed Soul Scythe artifact. Those are both really good. With the double bladed, I see most of them actually run the energy shield on Helm because double bladed is kind of mana hungry. Gives you mana back when you take damage, and it gives you resistance. They run Stalker chests because it does a shitload of damage. And then again, they run, depending on, I've seen some run. So some like to run Cleric boots. And then, but again, most are still going to run Assassin shoes. They're going to want to have that dodge roll. Double Blade is good now. It plays a lot of CC, a lot of stuns, a lot of slows. The damage isn't the highest on it, but it's definitely something kind of little off meta, but definitely still strong. And it's excellent for open world. So if you kind of want something that's flexible for open world and kind of 5v5. Now, it's not top end tier, but it's definitely viable if you really know how to play it. But I will say it's probably one of the harder builds to play correctly. You really need to be rotating your skills correctly to get the maximum uptime on your CC. If you're not rotating your auto attacks in between your abilities properly, it's definitely not going to be really doing much for you. So does anyone have any questions about those kind of builds?
I was just curious of your opinion on the build that I was running this last test for a couple weeks. I only got to test it up to like tier 5 though.
What's that?
So I'm running Howl on chest, wind wall, or I'm sorry, Howl on helm, wind wall, chest, and I really just run on my boots, and I run sword.
Just one-handed sword?
Honestly, I choose it up, or for whatever I'm doing. If I was tackling, I'd probably run clay. I never got the chance to try out Clarent Blade, and the majority of the time I was just running dual sword.
Plate. Well, here's the thing: if you're running plate, the issue with Clarent Blade, let's say, for instance, take that a good example is okay. So Clarent, you're running, does good damage, right? I have actually seen a build similar to what you just described before. There's only one guy currently running it, though.
The idea is to basically be a tackle-ish, but just like a bruiser, really. And I'll be able to PvE tank at will.
Well, the thing with that is you got to keep in mind is you're running plate not only for the one wall, but also the 50% CC, right?
Correct. So I'm mainly running
sacrifice.
hamstring on my W.
Yeah, so you're running slows, which is good. Slows are really strong. I mean, you can make it work, but there's other things that are going to be stronger that are going to be definitely
What would
preferred.
you suggest?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Two-handed great hammer. If you want more open roll, that's excellent. I mean, it's got lots of mobility.
Does the great hammer do damage though? Because the sword just did more passive, just brawler damage than the hammer did.
Not really. The mace and hammer lines are not known for damage. Sword's gonna do its kit's just built more around damage. But you got to remember, you're sacrificing a lot of that damage and giving up a ton of your CC potential. So, I mean, that's the offside. But like I said, I have seen your build before, and I thought it was kind of a neat build because you kind of pressure the backline with consistent potential damage.
Well, you can't run from it. And one target is basically permanently trainable with snare. And I figured between rotating a hamstring and Howl, I'd be able to at least free up some healers, being able to kite or something like that.
I mean, for open world, it definitely can work.
It's all open world. I don't play in the Guilders Guild, so it's all open world.
Well, you're not going to be able to tackle much. I mean, two-handed great hammer is probably the best tackle because people run it with rush, so you get that crazy mobility, and then you get the CC increase, and then you can rush, stun your target, and then you can kind of just, people jump in on it, blow it up. I've never seen that build in open world. I've seen that once or twice in a Hellgate. But even then, they weren't top end Hellgate teams. They were kind of just the B tier, I guess.
The main reason it developed is I ended up duoing and soloing a lot.
Hammer, basically.
And that was the only thing I found that could. Sorry.
Just let's give Smithy a chance here too. What was that, Smithy?
So basically, if you're gonna tackle, you need to go two-hand hammer. So that's the go-to then.
Yeah. Double if you want to be in plate. It's not the go-to tackle. Double blade is really awesome tackle as well. Two-handed great hammer is an excellent tackle. Those are probably right now the best two actual tackles. And then obviously Claws is pretty solid, but Claws is a one-trick pony. It's kind of phased out because it has no utility. Damage is mitigatable, but if you want something that just purely tackles, it does do that job well. You can't say that it's bad, but there's just other things. For instance, once you claw, you're done. I mean, double bladed can stick to that target, basically stun the living crap out of it, slow it. Two-handed great hammer is the same way. You two-handed great hammer your target, stun it, then you wind wall it into your team. So now it has to go around the wind wall. I mean, it's just you get more value out of those. I think those are right now the two best tackles. Personally, you're gonna definitely enjoy the playstyle as well. Claws is pretty boring.
So then, what you're saying is you could tackle in full plate with the hammer and still
absolutely.
be worthwhile in zone v zone and guild v guild.
Yep. I mean, great hammer. Right now, you're going to see it in GVGs. They're running rush with the two-handed great hammer, and then they're running sleep. So what they do is they rush in, stun the backline, they sleep the healer. Their DPS focuses the melee, and they zone the backline away with the wind wall and the sleep. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely viable. Heavy mace is the same way. You can use that as a tackle, just a little bit harder. Because you got to remember the snare charge jumps at the target, so if he's good, he can dodge it. But two-handed great hammer, between the hitbox and the speed, it's very difficult to dodge. And then you have rush on top of it. I definitely think that the two-handed great hammer is the better open world build. Some will argue that heavy mace, the great mace, is the better Hellgate GVG build. Because the bottom line is with that is that grave mace lands like a 3 or 4 person snare and silence, that fight's probably not going to go well for the enemy team. it has that playmaking ability, I guess. Like that really like, oh, okay, we lose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go on to the range DPS real quick. Unless anyone else has another question.
Let's definitely go on to the range, and we can always come back to everybody's questions and stuff too. That it's good interspersing a few people's questions. It's awesome.
Sure, no
It's been
problem.
really great.
So the first thing I'll mention for range DPS, and again, this is what I play, and it wasn't something I originally started playing. I was actually originally Frost, but the bottom line is if you want to play range DPS and you really don't know what you want to play, this is the build for you. It does everything extremely well, and it's probably the most high DPS spec in the game right now. That's the Great Curse. Pretty much every competitive GVG team, every competitive Hellgate team, even open world teams, they're going to be running Great Curse. It's amazing. I mean, it does everything you want it to. It has Armor Piercer. It just got nerfed pretty hard, but it's still Armor Piercer. So 15-second cooldown, reduces armor significantly, can hit multiple targets. I mean, this tells you how strong Armor Piercer is. If you'll see teams, if you land a good Armor Piercer at the beginning of an engage, they're going to try to disengage that fight and cleanse that Armor Piercer. Because at the higher tiers of play, your healer cannot keep up with the damage. For that 8 seconds that Armor Piercer's out, the healer just can't keep up. I mean, good teams are just going to cause so much AoE damage to everything that, it's just that strong. The Great Curse E is very powerful too. It's an AoE channeled ability that every time it hits a target, it applies a vital stack, which is your Q. But more importantly, the E also cleanses heal over times. So if let's say you're pressuring the healer, or let's say you're pressuring the other Frost Staff in the back line, and that Frost Staff's at 25% health and ice blocks, and let's say there's a nature healer trying to heal him up, what I do is to be like extra scummy, I'll E him when he's an ice block. So that whole time, that nature healer is trying to heal him with hots, and I'm cleansing all the heals. When he comes out of that ice block, he has 4 stacks of Vital Curse on him and an Armor Piercer. He just dies. I mean, it's over. And that also cleanses the heal over time from healing pots too. So even if he healing pot before he ice blocked, he's still going to die when he comes out. Unless, I get pressured really hard and have to ice block. But pretty much, I mean, it's just excellent. It allows you to do the stuff that's even ice blocked. And then basically the setup I run, it's kind of flexible on the boot slot, but it's pretty much standard for helm, ice block. For chests, I like the mage armor because, again, I want to do as much damage as humanly possible. Some like cleric, which you can go either or. I'm not, it's a 5% damage difference, and maybe you like one defensive cooldown over the other. Cleric's a little bit more forgiving than frost armor to use. They're both very powerful, though. And then for boots, pretty much you can go this is kind of a dealer's choice. A lot of people, I would say, probably will recommend assassin boots, again, for the dodge roll. And the new current Hellgate meta, you see a lot of choke points, a lot of sticky pots going out, a lot of AoE, a lot of wind walls. So this allows you to kind of get safely back to wherever you need to be. Night boots is excellent too, if you want to be more utility that way. And then last but not least, what I personally like to run is the cleric boots with run. I run predominantly in dive comps. So what run allows me to do is when my dive comp is really aggressive and pressuring the team properly, I can run up, catch up to them, and make sure I'm applying the appropriate damage to the right targets. And then if I need to run for my life, well, it does what it says it does. And I like the damage passives on all of it. I go damage 100% with damage food. So I can pretty much pump out more DPS than anything in the game. Anyone have any questions about Curse?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty cut and dry. And then Fire's made a huge comeback. I'd probably say this is probably the best. Someone will argue it's better than Curse. I don't personally think that's the fact, but you can't go wrong with Fire. Basically, the reason being is Firewall. A lot of choke points. Firewall is extremely strong. The more popular Fire staff right now is the Great Fire. It's pretty fun, too. I mean, it has short cooldowns. Firewall's 10 seconds, I believe. The Fire Pillar's 10-second cooldown does the AoE damage. Pretty much runs the exact same build-up as Curse. You're going to run Cleric, Mage, and whatever boot is kind of your preference. And then Frost is still really strong. Oh, and then for Fire, I forgot to mention, the Wildfire Staff is the other option, the Meatball. as they call it. The biggest difference between Great Fire and Meatball, Great Fire is more forgiving. If you miss one E or you only hit one target with the E, not the end of the world. Meatball, on the other hand, if you miss that Meatball, you're pretty much not doing any damage for the remainder of the fight until it comes off his 30-second cooldown. So keep that in mind. I think that's more of that is not as just comp friendly. Great Fire is pretty much good at any comp. Meatball, though, is going to be better in high CC comps where targets are slowed or stunned or snared, where you can really line up that Meatball. Because if you land it, well, you're going to chunk everyone for like 30% of their health, so or even more. And then that brings me into the Frost Staffs. Again, this is the range DPS Frost Staff. I'll get into the other build right after, just the support roles, I guess you can call them. It's a Great Frost that's made a comeback again from last beta. Does excellent zoning, does a slow now, does good damage from, it's just lots of great AoE damage. Pretty much the same setup, Cleric, Mage Chest, and the kind of dealer's choice on boots. But you can't go wrong with it. I would say out of the 3 staffs right now, that's not weak, but again, you're going to get probably a little bit more value out of some of the other staffs, but it's still extremely strong. If Frost is your passion, you enjoy it, you want to do AoE, and Great Frost is probably the best or second best PvE weapon in the game. It just does a shitload of AoE. It's excellent for that. And then that kind of brings me into the next role. These are just the kind of, I'll call them support. There's only 2 builds really for it right now. You have your Arcane, so your Empowering Beam is back. People run it with the Cloth Helm, the Artifact Helm that does the mana circle. Gives mana to everyone around it if you step in it. Pretty self-explanatory. You're a support role, so you're giving mana to your teammates. They run Plate on it because they're kind of more of a support role. Wind Wall, again, has great utility. And then for boots, like I said, you'll probably see Assassin boots on it because they're going to be in the front line more where they might get hit by wind walls. So they want to kind of be able to reposition where they need to be. And then that brings me into Icicle Staff. Probably Icicle Staff is the best weapon in the game. Frozen Hell is just absolutely OP. They might even nerf it, I think, at some point. Probably not anytime soon, though. So enjoy it while it lasts. Basically does a humongous, like 8-meter AoE slow on the ground where basically nothing can move for like 3 or 4 seconds. And then what Plate, the lasting slow effect lasts even longer. So it's kind of more or less think of it as like the Void Prison and HOTS. It's the Wombo combo spell. If you want to run like that super high AoE damage kind of comp in a Hellgate, that Icicle Staff can really set you up for some great combos that way. The only issue, like I said, is that staff is extremely expensive. I mean, you're looking at 1.5 mil, 2 mil per staff. So
Don't drop it.
yeah, you don't want to die with it if you can avoid it. But yeah, it runs the same Assassin Boots, Plate Chest, and then they run the Mana Cowl Helm. That's pretty
awesome.
much all the top end meta. Unfortunately, you just don't see. Oh, and I forgot to mention the one-handed crossbow. I know some of you were here for that specifically. Yes, that's actually probably ranked ahead of Fire right now. Cursed and one-handed crossbow are probably at a tie at the #1 builds for range DPS. One-handed crossbow probably does the most burst DPS in the game. If that's your thing, you want to blow people up quick, that's definitely the build for you. Again, Cleric Helm with Mage Chest. Some will run Assassin, but Mage is the meta. That's really what you want, your job to do damage. And then Assassin Boots is usually what I see 99% of the time on that build. And then they run an offhand of a shield, or they'll run the damage offhand, the artifact.
That's awesome. The build that's listed in the sort of starting builds there, we've got some basic stuff. You'll notice with all those, what's most important is actually the armor that Val's been talking about, that it's suggested that most people that are going to do that AoE damage get the Cleric Helm. Make sure you've got that Ice Block skill for exactly the reasons that Val's talked about. Make sure you have a chest. You can change things up a little bit and stuff, but try not to go off track too far from people like Val and others that know what they're talking about, that have studied the game. I'm sure there's great combinations out there. And the nice thing is, where most of us are probably starting on a gathering character and then switching to our PvP character after an hour or two in, you've got a separate character that you've bought premium on the same account. So it's not a separate account or anything necessarily. And you've just, you've got that option. If you make a mistake, you can change it. Oh, I don't really like that weapon, but I've got the same armor. It's the right armor. Or, you know what? Dealer's choice in the boots. I'm going to switch to assassin boots now. It was really nice having those knight's boots in that first big team fight. We won because of that. But then the next day, you know, like, I'm getting stuck with too many win walls or whatever else, that you'll have learning points to specialize. You'll have the ability to change things up by having a focused character on a particular task. What's listed there for the tank at the moment is the mace. It could be hammer. Doesn't like it's, but the build is the same. It's, you know, knight's armor for the chest. The helm could be, you know, dealer's choice, and the boots are probably the knight's boots that you're going to be protecting and getting out of trouble on your own that way too. The tackle peel roll, which should only be a smaller percentage of the group, just the reason being that as much as it's fun to do and we'd like to have, you know, people ganking and doing open world stuff, we can't have 50% of the guild doing it, or else we can't do any Hellgates, you can't do any GVGs, and you can't do any open world fights if you're all in that kind of gank role. With the leather armor, the assassin's chest can, of course, be the invisibility, and a lot of people also use the what's it called there, Val? The Inferno shield.
Yeah. For open world though, ambushes. If you're running an open world spec, you should be running probably ambush. I mean, ambush is amazing for open world.
Yeah, and some people switch it up, I think, to the Inferno Shield for some of the Hellgates, but that's probably again a dealer's choice as to what you're wearing.
Oh yeah. Like I said, there's going to be some melee builds. They just need that extra survivability, so Inferno Shield definitely allows them to have that. But yeah, you're not going to see ambush anymore in Hellgates very much. It's been nerfed and reworked a lot. It's still extremely strong, but it's more along lines, like I said, it's designed for open world, and now it's really just the best for open world. It's not just the best at everything anymore. So there's definitely better options for spells on chest now. The main reason why it's actually kind of fallen out of meta is before, when you're in ambush, your teammates could see and target you. Now they cannot. So if you ambush, A, your healer doesn't know where you're going to end up and pop up, and B, he cannot heal you while you're ambushed. So you might be at 10% health, but between the time you ambush and come out of it, I mean, another teammate might be pressured for extremely hard. So you might not have the time to really top you off to get you back in the fight.
Yep. Okay, so to reemphasize, important to know what kind of build you want to play. You could have some options to modify it slightly and stuff, but it will be difficult to be, you know, that extra 10 to 20% in specialization and be competitive if you don't have at least an idea of the role that you're looking to play and which direction you're going. You want to certainly, like Valley's going to go Great Curse. He's tried a couple other weapons in this last beta, but you run out of learning points eventually, and he's not gathering on that character too.
Yeah, that brings us to another important thing. Like, in a lot of people, they'll kind of want to do what they want with their learning points. If your main goal is to do competitive PvP, you need to be using your Albion specialization. It just gives such a huge advantage. It really does. It doesn't seem like a lot, but over the course of playing for a little while and really focusing on one thing, it makes all the difference. Like, I read up, I don't know if you guys really keep up on the forums, but I guess pretty much the developer, Corn there, said it the best. He's like, you know, we've been monitoring Hellgates and seeing, you know, red and black Hellgates, and we've come to the conclusion that, you know, even these small half-tier advantage, so, you know, we're talking only 50 average item power across the board, because we're seeing it have massive impacts on the quality of the Hellgates in the terms of basically the team that's half a tier ahead of the other team. It's a huge factor. We're actually now, and I don't support this at all, I just want this to be heard, they're thinking of putting a soft cap in black and red zone Hellgates now because of it. So if that doesn't tell you how strong specialization is, that they're physically going to be reworking and changing the mechanics of red zone Hellgates because of it, I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. If you need to gather on and all, period. Unless gathering is your main thing. I know some people here like to gather and craft like crazy. Then yes, obviously do that on your main. But if you want a PvP, you need to be dumping every ounce of LP into your weapon. I mean,
So not even like meth, right? Not even one.
Yeah, I
Not
don't.
even
Every
together.
single LP I have is going to go into my weapon until it's at 100, and then
Wow.
after that, every single LP is going into my chest.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't. I'm telling you right now, like for Hellgates right now, with the groups that I run in that are really competitive, let's say they make the average item level 7-1, right? They want you to bring 7-1 as a min. At 7-1, you should be easily clearing at that time over 1200 item power. If you're not at 1200 item power, but you still can bring 7-1, they're not bringing you. They're just like, sorry, we have someone else that's at 1250, 1260. Yeah, you're only at 1180. We're not bringing you. I mean, that's just how competitive it's gotten with the specialization. They will not bring you.
Yeah, because people in those Hellgates, they could lose 6 million in a single fight.
I died the other day in a Hellgate. I reversed 700,000 in kill fame. One death I took. We won the fight, but it was, I was in full 8-1 and 8-2.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a reality. Like, I'd be the same way. I'd be like, I totally understand someone not taking me in a group because I don't have the gear or the LP spent in the right direction to basically, I'm a liability to the team in that small situation. Now, open world, I still don't want to be a liability, so I'm still going to go the same way, and that's what I'm focusing on. But I remember at Neve and stuff, like you want those extra, every little percentage point makes a big difference in those fights.
Yep, damage is king. A lot of the fights are just won because of your gear and item level and specialization. You're pumping out so much damage the healer can't keep up. Yeah. And then it's not, you didn't win because you're the better team. You just won because you do more damage. It's like HOTS. Like if you're playing HOTS and you have a good lead, and let's say your 16 talent, tier 16 talent, you typically takes more defensive, but you're kind of rolling the team and you're beating up on them bad. Guess what? I'm taking the damage talent. Because we're just going to try to take damage talents on all of us. And we're going to try to pressure that damage even more. Give yourself the level advantage. Give yourself the damage advantage. I mean, that same rule applies to Albion.
Yeah. So in terms of the starting builds there, like I think you got it. From hearing this tonight, you've got an idea of what's there, what you could change and modify. You want to discuss that with your squad. You want to have a plan in place. You want to get with your squad and figure that out. We're going to be moving to channels here, I believe, in a minute here to sort some of the squads out a little bit better. And some of them are setting up like private chats or discords or whatever, just to work out, not to be somewhere else for voice comms and stuff. Like you've got places here to be, but just not to clutter up the Albion online channels. So however you're doing it to organize yourselves, it's good. It's sort of an icebreaker. You get to know some people, then find out, work together. That could have been Frost Staff though, or Fire Staff, or Curse as the damage in that first build there. It doesn't really matter which one. As a guild, I believe Keltar will be talking here in a minute about which crafters we have for which, and we need to just make sure that we've got those items covered. The squad goal is as a group of about 10 people. It could be 8, it could be 12, it doesn't really matter, but it's to outfit a few people to get silver. Some of those people like Val are going to be like Val and Mobile are out immediately because we need silver right away to set up the guild and do some things. Then there's other people that are like the Storm and Ramrod squad. I believe now we've talked about it. And we're just going to gather first for about an hour and a bit on those characters and then switch over to our silver grinding characters and stuff. So we might move all the gathering and stuff out in the first 2 hours to Cara Leone as a group. We're probably all starting in the same area. It may be Swamp Cross just because of the variety of resources that are available there. Mountain Cross is really good, except because it's so good, there'll be 1,000 people there. And then the other areas just don't have enough metal and stuff. Yeah.
Real quick on that next Hector 2 update that they postponed tomorrow, they're actually adding more starting zones in. So there's going to be multiple starts, multiple mountains starts. And Lars has actually found out that even if you say that you went in Swamp Cross and you pulled all your gear like normal, if it's too crowded, you can still take a boat to the other swamp area without getting charged. But if you grab your gear and you try to go to mountain, then it's gonna charge you.
Okay. So, and that's just the starting town that there'll be multiple zones, or is it also
more starting areas? Like
they added like a new starting area with like a 3-map cluster right next to the other one.
Nice.
Yeah, it basically looked like they doubled the amount of starting areas. Each one, we said there's like Swamp Cross and Swamp Landing, and they are tied together there. And from what I saw, you can move back and forth even with equipment and everything, no cost.
Perfect. Okay, so it gives us options of either that or Mountain Cross. The forest would be potentially awesome because we need so many logs, but there's no metal there, and it's a little ways away to get it. Like the stuff in the steppes is so small, and you need so much metal too. So hopefully each squad is gathering enough stone to contribute to the buildings. Embo, can you just talk? Well, sorry, is there anything more in the builds? Would you suggest still to have mace and dagger as the suggested for day one there, Val, or do you want to switch up the tank and tackle as to what you would suggest for those?
I mean, it's going to really come down to. I mean, you can't go wrong with heavy mace or like the great hammer. I mean, they're both excellent. Now, as for tackle, like I said, claws do a good job tackling. I personally think double blade is a stronger tackle. And again, the two-handed great hammer is a good tackle and good tank, so that kind of could fill both roles. If you think we're really limited on resources and you want to have tanks that do both, I mean, that would kind of solve your problem.
Yeah, that would be simple. And for day one, just to get people going, like until I think it was a test or someone who was saying that until you're spending LP, it's not really costing you anything more than like a little bit of time on the one character. It's
the majority of the population won't be in tier 4 the first day anyway. I mean, I'm just happy that I will be because, like I said, it gives me a jump on the specialization grind.
Yeah,
but,
the specialization grind doesn't start till tier 4 for particular weapons, or?
Yep, it doesn't start till tier 4, so that's why getting the tier 4 is so huge if you're like trying the PvP.
And that's why we need stone to make the buildings. Until we can make tier 4 buildings, we can't make anything tier 4.
So for those of us that are going to log in a gathering character first, what weapon would you recommend for gatherers that are going to be full-time gatherers and wear gathering armor?
Pretty much the two most common, probably the most common weapon actually is double-bladed. It has stun run, so it has a mobility spell on the W, and then it also has a dash on the E. So that's going to give you a lot of mobility. You'll see that very commonly for gatherers. And then obviously Bloodletter, but that's a little bit more expensive because it's an artifact. But you can run tier 4 of it. It would be cheap. But again, you're probably not going to have Bloodletter the first week that much, so you're kind of going to be a sitting duck. But, I mean, daggers still have dash, but double blade is going to be the easier, more affordable, more mobile option to begin with. Then double bladed will be very, very similar once you have that option. But those are probably the two popular ones I see. Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong. And then for leather now, even though double bladed kind of lacks in the damage category, the leather gathering gear has spells that do a lot of damage to mobs now. So Bear Trap now does a lot of damage. They like buffed it a ton against PvE monsters. So
cool. I'm heading to another meeting. Embo and Keltar will help with the squad stuff and with any numbers that you guys need for that. Certainly, there's really good examples of the way the squads are set up. The light crossbow, of course, could be in that damage role instead of the fire frost. Like, you get the idea of what the builds are. We'll certainly be trying to craft certain things. Keltar will know more by what we can craft based on things. We know that we need like 20,000 tier 3 logs to achieve certain goals. It's a lot. And it takes a long time to get all this stuff. So we need everybody, of course, to chip in a certain amount of time and effort into any of these efforts. So I got to go to that other meeting though. Val, thanks so much. This is really, really good. So helpful. And I'm glad it's all recorded here for people to go on and to look back at these builds and stuff.
yeah, and then no problem. I appreciate it. It's not a problem. I played so much this beta. I have like 400 hours clocked, so I've got a lot of time in it.
Getting so pumped just to hear about them.
The last thing I will mention for gathering, again, I'm no expert on it. I did get getting the tier 7, but honestly, the best guide I've said that's no bullshit, straight to the point. It's very, very well written. Rook had at some point linked it, Chuck's Gathering Guide. I don't know him personally. I just found it randomly on the Albion website. He had posted it. That guide nails it. I mean, literally, I could not have written a better guide myself. Everything in that guide is gold. Like, every little thing he's telling you to do is 100% accurate. That guide is as good as it gets if you're a gatherer and you're not sure what you need to be doing or how to prepare yourself properly or what kind of mount you should be riding or what kind of gear you should be running. He goes over all that pretty much in that. And it's a quick read, 5 minutes. So that guide's excellent.
Where's the guide?
Is that stuff applicable to someone that's gathering for the first hour? I mean, to some point, yeah, but like,
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, you're gonna be wanting to use your horse. I mean, your ox is gonna be basically what I did, and I found this worked best. If I'm gathering the first hour, I'm riding my horse, and then when I get my horse capacity full, and we're talking including like the boot passive for carry weight, I then would swap to my ox if I was like in a hot spot, and I would just ox it up and just put the horse in my inventory. But yeah, you're gonna want to be on your horse as much as possible. That's gonna be your fastest yield per hour. Unless you find like a really sweet spot that no one's farming, then obviously pop on the ox once you get full, and then it's a longer run back because you're slower. But I mean, you're getting that increased speed on the horse, so you always want to have your horse and mount on you. Unless you're like in the black zone, you want to be on a horse. You never, ever, ever, ever want to be on an ox in the black zone.
I posted the link to Chuck's guide in the Albion.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Frankie. Yeah, guys, read that. That guide is, I'm talking, that thing is awesome. I mean, I thought that guy was perfect.
Yeah, and it's a quick 5-minute read. After you read it, you'll read it again and say it seems obvious, but it isn't.
All right. I think Keltar, that's all you now. If you want to start kind of doing your thing, unless you guys had something else. Oh, I'll just mention Warbow's changed. It no longer stuns. Still great for open world. That's my last comment there. So yeah, you can take it over, Keltar.
Yep. I mean, I think most everyone knows what squad they are in. If you don't, feel free to contact me and I'll tell you what squad you're in. As far as crafting, I have posted the image of what it looks like what we have right now. That's in Albion members. Again, if you don't have access to Albion members somehow, feel free to contact me. That's pretty much it as far as that goes. I mean, I invite you guys, like I said, to play together as a squad, or at least like get chats going together, because that's how we'll do well on day one. It's by having great synergy. Or you can just like ask here if you need to.
Keltar, this might be a silly question, but I honestly don't know what squad I'm in.
Technically, you and Mobile aren't in the squad because you're on your own thing.
Gotcha.
So you're on the squad Vol Mobile. There you go.
Out of curiosity, though, is there like a certain individual or two that's going to be giving me what I need to get going, or is that kind of?
There will be a squad assigned to Feeding New Year.
Okay, cool.
So I did talk a little bit with Mobile about it, but like we figured out there was no point right now in identifying exactly what you guys need because things could change. But I mean, obviously, the sooner you guys know exactly what you need as far as.
Oh no, we know what we need. We're good to go.
Then yeah, we
I'm doing the ordering for Mobile. He told me just to order whatever he thinks was his best for him. So he's like, just you take care of it.
All right, just contact me in PM so I have it written somewhere so I can relay it.
Cool.
Kimchi, do you know what squad you're in?
I think it's the squad that reject forever alone.
Yeah, because
I don't know which.
No gamer left.
I don't know which one. No one left behind. Sounds like a leftover.
Yeah, well, it's like no child left behind. It's a well. There you go.
I think I'm the only one in there. Can I be the squad leader?
There's Bumpy and Gavin, and well, technically I would be in there, but I'm even later than that. So there you go.
Just because we play on the second day.
Well, that or because you're on vacation that week, so you are out of town and you come back the week after.
Mm-hmm. I feel rejected.
So if there's any subject you guys feel like we need more information on, make sure you contact me with it, or just speak up now if you can think of it right now.
So in the squad, no one left behind. What we're supposed to do on the second day?
Good question. And to be honest, you will probably only know that on during day one, because that your squad's role will be very simple. It will be to patch up what didn't go as planned on like hour one.
Okay, and who is the squad leader?
You? Honestly, I think there's going to be like 3 or 4 people. And actually, you guys like are put in that squad, but it's very possible that when you log in, let's say like I'm going to like say like Pirate Squad, like has like a couple people who've logged off for the night because real life, and you guys go log in and you're like, hey, like can I help like in any way? Like maybe Pirate Squad will be like, hey, come here in our channel and we'll give you something to do. That's a possibility. Not saying that's how it's going to happen, but it's a possibility.
Ye be our cabin boy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just kidding.
So,
yeah, you have to speak in pirate language if you're in pirate.
Okay. For July 17, what time is start?
8 a.m. your time.
Actually, the time hasn't been announced yet.
Okay, it's gonna be in the morning or afternoon? Do we know? No. Okay.
Well, if they don't change from all of the releases they've done before, it would be 8 a.m. So hopefully they don't change too much.
Oh my god, 8 a.m. so early.
Well,
Yeah, it's
for Eastern, it's 8 a.m.
For right now, it's 8 a.m. Eastern.
Okay. Well, I can be there on the first day if I can woke up.
But imagine if you were in the West Coast.
Yeah, that sucks. I'm lucky I'm East Coast.
Oh, that's mean what time?
5 a.m. for them.
5 a.m. Oh, good breakfast, bacon, egg.
If I was a betting person, I would bet that they'll probably make an announcement of that in the very first week of July.
Thank you, Clemmy. Yes, so.
And you are a betting person.
Yeah,
I would bet if I didn't have an idea.
She's a nice person, the smartest.
Yeah.
There's also probably going to be like launch date issues, I would guess.
Yeah, there will be.
Most MMOs do, and they're not as big of a company as most companies.
Yeah, but they've had like a bunch of like very crowded releases with betas. Although I mean this is it, so you're correct. It's very likely something's going to happen that something might be delayed, or a server will be released in like an hour after, like they have to take it down for like 15 minutes. Everything's possible. But based on how they've handled it, like all of the betas, they are doing a pretty good job at it. And usually, what they've done is, if there was anything that they needed to address that wasn't like game breaking, they addressed it when they did the server maintenance the next day.
Well, right now they just announced that they're delaying that patch because they're doing hardware upgrades, and there's a delay on the hardware upgrades. So they are, planning on it and improving the hardware just for release. So. Now, but like everybody said, we know how a first day MMO launches go. So.
All right. Well, for the meeting part, I think that's pretty much it. Unless someone has something they want to.
Keltar, I was just gonna say, for those squad leaders, I have that sheet I made that I can put a link and they make a copy. It just basically, you just fill out your whole squad on it, and it allows you to figure out exactly how much tier 2 resources you need up to tier 3. It's just for starting out, to see how much you need to collect to get everybody going for silver farming or whatever you're doing. And I'll post a link in the Albion members chat to it again in case people want to try to use it. You just have to make a copy for yourself so you can edit it. Otherwise, people would be changing stuff on the same sheet. So.
Good idea.
Embo, do you think it would be a good idea if Ord sends that to you and you spread it around? Because I think you're the one that has contact with squads directly.
Yep, I can do that.
You have a big win on your side.
Okay, he's got a hurricane.
Cindy.
Anything else that anybody wants to talk about?
Don't sell no gold on the first day.
What was that?
Say, don't sell your gold on the first day.
Yeah, well, you could.
Why is a bad idea? It's not viable. Just at least wait for 1 week later.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at that doc on. Lars actually looked up the document about the guy that was tracking it through the betas, and it gets up to maybe like 20 gold towards the late end of the first day. 20 to 1 or something like that.
Can you send me that sometime? I'm curious to look at that too.
I mean, it really it's really, really bad till the end of the first week. And because they, like most games, like, I don't know, we played Revelation Online and they had a minimum of 100 to 1. Well, I thought Albion had a 25 to 1 minimum, but apparently it starts at 0. So, I mean, it's real world market type stuff. It has to build up on its own.
You're going to lose our gold for no reason. That's
if you want to sell gold at the start, sell it to me.
No, if you want, you can give it to me. I will hold it for you.
So that
I will never come back.
That's your secret to how you were big money last beta.
Oh, what's up, my bro? My partner business? Alright, man, we need to set it up on the first day.
There was a change that came that I didn't even know about until just recently. The nutrition on buildings now decays over time, whether you use the building or not.
Yeah, it takes 2 days.
More maintenance.
Well, focus on raising animals too is a big thing too. Like on farms, if you don't use focus, you don't get seeds. So there's no guaranteed seeds on the next day just from planting. You got to actually use focus to get seeds the next day, but it usually gives double the return. So basically, use focus 1 day, you're good for the next 2 days, kind of thing. And you need to use focus on raising animals too, otherwise you're not guaranteed to get a baby from it.
Yeah, but that, of course, that's with carrot seeds. The higher tier foods, well, actually for animals, yeah, you always want to use focus, but for the higher tier seeds, you actually have a much higher rate of a seed return. Like corn, for instance, gives you an 80% seed return. But of course, it's going to cost you about 10,000, or I forgot the cost, but around 10,000 for each seed that doesn't get replicated. But so at the higher tier levels, you can sustain food a little bit easier without having to use focus all the time, that is. But anyways, with the changes to the nutritional buildings, I think it's going to spike the food market more again. Food's definitely going to be something that people are always going to be wanting to buy.
If anybody knows that they're not going to use their island, I'm going to be looking for people to donate their island so I can farm it.
One question I had was about, I think Rook mentioned that for the first hour or so, we're going to be some of us who are going to be farming gathering on our gathering characters. Then we're going to switch over to the silver grinding. I mean, I had initially wanted to do the silver grinding, so that's kind of like across the board now. That's going to be the thing.
I think it's squad dependent. It's not like all the squads. I think he's talking about for the squad that Rook's in and stuff. Some are going to be straight up silver gathering from the get-go. I know like Pirate and Reaver squads are going, we're just making what gear we need, getting the gear we need, and then we're going out to farm as much as possible. Going to try to look for some decent red or black solo dungeons like Val and Mobile are doing if it's not too crowded. But other people are going to still gather and craft and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
But then again, I mean, 4 to 6 hours of silver farming rooms, people might get tired of that and want to switch it to go gather or whatever. So you can see people switching back.
I'm going to go 12 hours straight. It's going to be a beast.
Do you still think the solo farms and all that won't be too busy out in the black zones to silver farm? Wow.
I mean, the only thing I can go off of is my experience this beta, and I was farming in the heart of Red Army territory. The second day, the first day I didn't go out because I was tired after work. I farmed Black Zone the entire first 2 months solo, and I can probably say that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, could be probably pretty relatively safe. However, that Friday night and weekend, forget it. It's gonna be brutal. Going out in the Black Zones that first weekend, unless you go with a big group, you're gonna be hunted down and murdered.
So you're saying make your big push at the beginning of the week and then go back to something safer for the weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
I
if
just
you're a
know with
solar
the
farmer-
changes with Hector, they got rid of a lot of the solo dungeons for that
No,
that
they're
veteran
all
crap.
the same still. No, there's the same amount of solo dungeons now for the most part.
Okay.
From what I saw in this beta and like what we did in our test the other day is that the veteran XP, they definitely did not fix that. It looks like solo dungeons are definitely going to give you much, much more fame than the veteran stuff. Like Mord, we were in that one for how long? We weren't, we weren't an ideal group makeup, but we were not making crap for fame. So that's kind of
Just because the length of time it takes to kill a veteran, even with a good group versus wiping through a solo dungeon, it's not worth it.
Basically, my just kind of the math of it. Veteran mobs are kind of meh. The elites is where the fame's at. If you kind of want to do a group, you should focus on trying to do something with elite content. That's where you're going to get the most.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And those are like the castles and things like that, or how do we identify those on the map?
They're the home bases. They're the ones with like that gigantic monster on the middle.
Okay. And even
those
if
will have
the boss mob is not there, the dungeons still can be farmed?
Yeah, it's an open world outside dungeon. Just those are going to be extremely dangerous, though. I mean, you're probably going to see raid parties of 50 plus people in them.
Okay.
So they can be a little gamey.
I meant to I was curious because I missed the other meeting. We weren't going to actually go for a territory like with our guild, were we? We were just going to take Carleone, I think. Like we were just going to build up a guild hall and stuff in Carleone and basically roam the black. Is that what we were going to do?
No, I thought was 12 plus hours later, we're going to see what we can do about territory wise if we can find something in the time zone. I thought that's what we were doing.
I wasn't sure. I missed the other meeting. I know before we were talking, I heard.
That's not ironed out yet. That's going to be, besides whatever they decide to do territory wise, we're probably not going to, only a select few people are going to know. So I'm not going to worry about that. I think as far as my understanding, though, is our goal is to do a Black Zone territory like we did in the previous beta, at least right now. So if that changes, I'm sure they'll let us know. But that's my consensus right now. They want us to be prepared for a large open world fight for a territory about 12 hours in, 8-9 o'clock Eastern time. So
yeah, there's no saying that we won't do both, right? We set up the guild island, we start leveling that up until we get things up to like the higher tiers. It's not really an issue. So then we'll decide if we focus on the guild island or any territory we might end up with.
Well, the issue with the territory, though, is you have to make the decision. Buying a territory is a significantly easier task than trying to GVG and take a territory. So,
and Val on that is like, say we take one the first day, could we run into have to fight for it the next day? GVG? Is it that soon?
Yeah, potentially. They're right on top of each other now. Probably not the next day, but within that week for sure. I mean, you're going to be looking at potential GVG encounters. I'd probably say 2-3 days after you take a territory, because they got to take the war camps to siege from. So that's probably going to take a day or two. But by the third day, yeah, I think, assuming you don't have any buffer territories at that time, you're going to be in a situation. The GVGs are going to start day 2. People are going to be, GVGs are going to start quickly.
Is there a change to the war camps from last time we played?
I'm not the best person to ask on that stuff. As far as
the layout looked different in some of the videos I didn't see, but I didn't know if like you had to actually kill some mobs before you get to and declare or not. But
I don't believe so.
I mean, and with the tier 8 resource changes, if you own a tier 8 resource, once we get gatherers at that level, it's always easier to have a territory versus having to raid somebody else for T8 resources.
Yeah, I mean, territories now in this current version of the game, in my opinion, are finally in a decent spot where they actually have pretty significant value. Like you just said, I mean, 8.1, like right now, 8.1 is considered like the competitive minimum requirement for anything competitive if you want to be really competitive right now. So being able to farm and craft and make tier 8 resources gear is going to be definitely a huge advantage for your guild.
Oh, I haven't been in the black zone in Hector, but did they connect the black zones to each other still? Like if
Yeah.
Okay, so then you can, so if you locked out through the portal, you still can get to like the high sector. Just
you have to run a lot. It's like a probably a 30-minute run. It's not fun. You have to go like cross like 16 tiles probably. From like low to high, it's a hike. You're looking at probably 20 minutes. Think of the old run back, but probably a tad longer. It's pretty terrible.
Well, it reminds me of the last beta or whatnot, where you run through the royals, through all the black zones and stuff to get to the city.
Well, Pirate Squad, I'm trying to friend all you guys that's in there. I think we're just missing a couple of people. And we'll probably try to put together something next week to discuss everything, get a game plan going. We're kind of waiting for this next update to come in to see what the starting zones change to and stuff. And then Pirate Squad will get together with everybody and get a game plan going so we're ready for launch. It sounds like we still have, 2 or 3 weeks of beta before they shut it down at least?
Yeah, and then the staging server is up if you want to try out the starting zones. I messed with them yesterday.
Was not up earlier, actually.
Yeah, it was just down.
Oh, okay. They must have been doing something with it.
Yeah, Anya told me that they're not going to release any details for the launch until July, early July, and Clemmy kind of said the same thing too. So we won't know whether there'd be like a week of the server down or 3 days or what, but for now we still got at least a good 2 weeks of testing.
I would say a safe bet is probably sometime the 10th or after is when the servers will come down. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was mid to late that same week.
Clemmy, do you think they'll be kind enough to do a staging for the final release patch?
Well, I mean, they do put everything up on staging before they throw it out there, so yes.
Okay, cool. Because that'd be awesome. All right. I think that's pretty much. Does anyone else have any final questions for me, real quick?
Okay.
Yes.
I heard a
Go
yes
ahead.
somewhere.
You go first.
Well, I don't know who else spoke. I didn't see it. So
I overspoke someone. If there's no other questions, I'll stop the recording now. Last call.
Kimchi, do you have any question? Because you said something.
No, it's okay. I'll find my answer.
Okay. And is there any question non-Val related?
I think this is all.
Then I dub this meeting adjourned.